Oh my God. They found me. I don't know how, but they found me. Run for it, Marty! Who? Who do you think? The Libyans! Holy shit!
Back in 1985, a science fiction film about a teenage boy traveling through time in a DeLorean hit theaters looking like pure summer entertainment, but the truth behind it was far crazier. Back to the Future tells the story of Marty McFly, who is accidentally thrown back to 1955, unintentionally disrupts his parents' first meeting, and must fix everything before he himself is erased from existence. But what most audiences never realized was how chaotic everything behind the scenes really was. Michael J. Fox, the actor the whole world now associates with Marty McFly, not the first choice and nearly wasn't in the film at all. Another actor shot for more than a month before being fired. Christopher Lloyd initially turned down the role of Doc Brown because he had no idea how to play the character. Leah Thompson, Crispin Glover, Thomas F. Wilson, a cast that looked unbelievably perfect on screen, were backed by negotiations, disagreements, and last-minute decisions no one had planned. The script was rejected by studios more than 40 times. And the title the whole world knows today, Back to the Future, nearly got replaced by a name so terrible no one wanted to say it out loud in the boardroom. From unbelievable behind-the-scenes stories to shocking production decisions, this film has secrets that many people still don't know 4 decades later. So today, let's count down 15 strange facts about Back to the Future. And stay until number 1, because it involves an ending written in 24 hours, a line that wasn't in the original script, and a last-minute that created a franchise still alive today. Hit like, subscribe, let's begin the countdown. Number 15. The script was rejected 44 times. Let's start before there was anything. Before the DeLorean, before Marty McFly, before even the first Great Scott. In 1980, writer Bob Gale was cleaning out his father's house and happened to find his high school yearbook. Gale flipped through the pages and wondered, if I met my dad when he was young, would we have been friends? A simple, interesting idea full of potential. Gale told director Robert Zemeckis. The two started writing, and the Back to the Future script was born. They took it all over Hollywood with the confidence of two men who had discovered a golden formula. Hollywood's response? No. The script was rejected by studios a total of 44 times. 44 times. Not because it was bad, but because it wasn't dirty enough. The early 1980s were the era of raunchy teen comedies. Animal House, Porky's, movies whose success was measured by how outrageous they were and how much sex they showed. Back to the Future, with its story about friendship, time travel, and family, was considered too wholesome, too light, not edgy enough to compete. Then they went to Disney. Disney rejected it too, but for the exact opposite reason. To Disney, the script wasn't too wholesome, it was too inappropriate. A story about a mother developing romantic feelings for her own son didn't fit the studio's family brand. Zemeckis and Gale were trapped between two extremes, not dirty enough for Hollywood, too dirty for Disney. Their last chance came when Zemeckis had a major hit with Romancing the Stone in 1984. Universal Pictures, seeing his rising profile, decided to take a chance. The movie that 44 studios had rejected became the highest-grossing film of 1985, earning more than $389 million worldwide. 44 rejections, 1 yes, and film history was rewritten. Number 14, the worst title in Hollywood history. There's a behind-the-scenes fact that once you know it, you'll never look at the title Back to the Future again without breathing a sigh of relief. This movie was nearly called Spaceman from Pluto, not a temporary working title, not a half-joking suggestion during a brainstorm. This was an official memo from Sid Sheinberg, head of Universal Studios and executive producer of the film, sent directly to Zemeckis and Gale, carefully explaining why he disliked the title Back to the Future and demanding it be changed to Spaceman from Pluto. Sheinberg's logic. Back to the Future sounded unmarketable. Spaceman from Pluto, in his view, sounded more exciting and fantastic to audiences. Zemeckis and Gale read the memo and panicked completely. They couldn't directly refuse the head of the studio financing their entire project. But they also couldn't let the movie be renamed Spaceman from Pluto, a title that sounded like a cheap 1950s B-movie, not a family comedy expected to become a summer blockbuster. The man who saved the situation was Steven Spielberg, the film's other executive producer. Spielberg read the memo, understood the problem immediately, and sent Sheinberg a reply that essentially said, "Sid, thanks for the funniest memo I've ever received." He wrote as if he completely believed Sheinberg was joking. not issuing a real order, not making a serious request, just making a clever joke. Sheinberg received the letter and faced an awkward choice. Either admit he had been mistaken for joking, or stay silent and let things continue. He chose silence. Sheinberg never mentioned changing the title again. Back to the Future kept its name. And Spaceman from Pluto remained forever the worst title that, thankfully, never appeared on any poster. Sometimes one person's diplomacy matters more than any production decision. Number 13. The first Marty McFly was not Michael J. Fox. There is a version of Back to the Future the world never saw, and it began with a casting decision Zemeckis never wanted to make. Zemeckis and Gale's first and only choice for Marty McFly was Michael J. Fox, who was dominating television with the series Family Ties. But Fox had no availability. The producers of Family Ties worried that losing Fox would hurt the show, especially with another lead star, already out on maternity leave, and decided not to even let Fox read the script. Fox never knew the opportunity existed. Zemeckis and Gale were forced to find someone else. The list of names considered sounds like an 80s party. Johnny Depp, Ralph Macchio, John Cusack, Charlie Sheen, Robert Downey Jr., Ben Stiller, Billy Zane, each had reasons to fit, each had reasons not to fit. In the end, Universal head Sid Sheinberg convinced Zemeckis to cast Eric Stoltz, who had just impressed audiences with his role as Rocky Dennis in Mass. Stoltz was hired, and cameras started rolling in November 1984. Problems appeared immediately. Stoltz was a method actor. He fully immersed himself, asked everyone to call him Marty on and off camera, and approached the character with the seriousness of a heavy psychological drama. Marty McFly needed lightness, charm, and natural humor. Stoltz brought intensity and depth. In one confrontation scene with Biff, Stoltz pushed so hard he left real bruises on actor Thomas F. Wilson's shoulder despite repeated requests to tone it down. After more than a month of filming, Zemeckis reviewed the footage and realized there was a hole in the middle of the screen. On January 10, 1985, Zemeckis personally met with Stoltz and told him he was fired. Zemeckis later called it, "the hardest meeting of my career. I broke his heart." Every scene Stoltz had filmed had to be reshot with Fox, adding around $4 million to the budget. Fox finally got the role without even reading the script first. The result, the biggest hit of 1985. And Stoltz? He went on to have a respected career. But to movie fans, he remains the Marty McFly no one remembers. Number 12. Fox filmed at 2 a.m. every night. When Michael J. Fox was finally allowed to join Back to the Future, he faced a schedule most normal people would not survive. Family Ties, his hit TV series, could not be interrupted. The show's producers only agreed to release Fox on one condition. He still had to complete every episode he had committed to. No negotiation, no exceptions. Fox's solution? Live in two worlds at once. By day, he reported to the Family Ties set, filming sitcom scenes from morning through late afternoon like a normal television star. Then he drove straight to the Back to the Future set, began filming at 6:30 p.m., and continued until 2:30 a.m. Go home. Sleep a few hours. Wake up. Repeat. For months, Fox averaged only 5 hours of sleep a night. "I ran on adrenaline," Fox later admitted in an interview. "I barely knew where I was and didn't really know what I was doing. But here is the funniest twist. That real exhaustion perfectly served the character." Marty McFly spends the film constantly disoriented, panicked, and reacting to every situation with genuine surprise. A significant part of that realism came from the actor playing Marty being literally exhausted and disoriented himself. But Fox didn't stop. Even during that insane schedule, he taught himself guitar for the Johnny B. Good scene, practicing in every spare moment between the two sets. He learned enough that his hands looked convincing on camera. Although the singing voice in the scene was not Fox's, the vocals were recorded by singer Mark Campbell. Fox really played the guitar parts himself. A man sleeping 5 hours a night, filming 2 projects at once, still found time to learn guitar for a scene lasting only a few minutes. That wasn't acting, that was dedication. Number 11. Doc Brown was almost someone else. Most people cannot imagine Back to the Future without Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. Wild white hair, eyes wide open as if he had just seen the future, and the shout of "Great Scott!" exploding like he had invented electricity. But Lloyd initially turned the role down. Not because he disliked the script, because he had no idea how to play the character. Lloyd read the script and saw Doc Brown as odd, eccentric, hard to grasp. A mad scientist with a time machine and a strange friendship with a teenage boy. He couldn't find the hook to build the character around. Then a friend suggested a simple idea: Think of Albert Einstein. Not Einstein the theoretical physicist or the equations, but Einstein from the famous photographs, the man with wild hair and the eyes of someone thinking about things completely detached from the world around him. Physically present, mentally in another dimension. Lloyd saw the light. He accepted the role and began studying Einstein. How he stood, how he looked, how he reacted to the world, as if everything were a fascinating mystery that needed solving immediately. Lloyd brought all of that into Doc Brown and added something the script never wrote: total sincerity. Lloyd's Doc Brown never pretends. He truly believes everything he says, truly feels every emotion he shows. And then there's a small detail most viewers don't know. The exclamation, "Great Scott!" One of the most quoted lines of the 1980s was not in the original script. Lloyd invented it during filming, feeling that Doc Brown needed a signature reflex line whenever shocked. Zemeckis heard it, loved it instantly, and kept it. An actor who almost said no, an Einstein's inspiration, and an improvised line. That is how Doc Brown became Doc Brown. Number 10. The time machine was originally a refrigerator. Imagine this scene. Doc Brown pulls back the tarp, and behind it is not a sleek DeLorean with gull-wing doors, but a refrigerator. That was Back to the Future in the earliest drafts. Zemeckis and Gale originally designed the time machine as a fixed time chamber, basically a small room you stepped into and emerged from in another era. Then they realized a stationary machine would completely limit the story. Marty couldn't travel dynamically, couldn't drive through a parking lot at midnight, couldn't create thrilling chase scenes. So the machine became a refrigerator, a movable object, large enough for one person to climb inside, with the right kind of strange 1950s science fiction feel. The idea progressed fairly far in development, until Steven Spielberg heard about it and immediately shook his head. Spielberg's objection was not artistic or technical, it was child safety. He worried kids watching the movie would climb into refrigerators at home to imitate Marty McFly, lock themselves inside, and suffocate. Spielberg insisted the machine become a vehicle. Zemeckis and Gale began searching. They chose the DeLorean, not because it was fast or powerful, but because its upward opening doors looked like a spaceship landing, perfectly fitting the original idea that people in 1955 would think Marty was an alien. John DeLorean, founder of the struggling car company facing financial and legal troubles at the time, later sent Zemeckis and Gale a thank you letter because the film immortalized his car in a way no marketing campaign ever could. And the refrigerator idea? It was never fully thrown away. Spielberg later used the exact concept in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, when Indy climbs into a refrigerator to survive a nuclear blast. From Back to the Future to Indiana Jones, one refrigerator, 2 movies, and one producer who clearly still liked the idea he originally rejected. Number 9. There is still a Stoltz scene in the movie. Zemeckis fired Eric Stoltz, reshot everything with Michael J. Fox, and the film was released as if Stoltz had never existed. That is the official story. But if you know where to look, Stoltz is still there, hidden in at least one scene of the version the whole world saw. The moment Marty dives into the DeLorean in the Twin Pines Mall parking lot at midnight happens too fast, too dark, and too far away to clearly distinguish the face. Many people on the crew believe that is Stoltz, not Fox. No one can confirm it because the motion is too quick, but no one can disprove it either. On top of that, Thomas F. Wilson, who played Biff Tannen, once said the hands grabbing his collar in the cafe confrontation scene were actually Stoltz's hands, not Fox's. Once again, the footage is not clear enough to prove it, but Wilson was present for both versions of filming. He knew the difference. Decades after the movie's release, some Stoltz footage was finally made public, and what audiences saw was a completely different Marty McFly. Not worse or better, different. Stoltz played Marty with the emotional weight of a drama, heavier and more tense, lacking the easy comedic lightness Fox brought naturally. You can see why Zemeckis felt there was a hole in the center of the screen. But you can also see Stoltz was not bad at all. He was simply acting in a different movie than the one Zemeckis wanted to make. Final twist, a full Stoltz cut never existed and never could exist. He only filmed about 1/3 of the movie before being fired. The rest of Back to the Future, all the most important scenes, all the most iconic moments, were Fox, and only Fox. Number 8. Ronald Reagan laughed hysterically at himself. In one scene of Back to the Future, Marty sits across from Doc Brown in 1955 and tries to explain that he has come from the year 1985. As proof, Marty tells Doc that the President of the United States at that time is Ronald Reagan. Doc Brown reacts immediately with complete disbelief. Ronald Reagan, the B-movie actor from 1940s and 1950s westerns, is President of the United States. The scene is played entirely for laughs, and audiences in 1985 laughed loudly because Reagan was the sitting president at the time, and Doc Brown's shock reflected exactly what many people had felt when a Hollywood actor entered the White House. Universal Pictures, however, did not laugh. The studio was seriously worried that the scene could be seen as insulting the sitting president, an unnecessary political risk for a summer comedy. They decided to send the scene to the White House to gauge the reaction before the film was released. The response from Reagan was not anger, not a demand for edits, not an official complaint. Reagan watched the scene and laughed hysterically. He loved it so much that he asked for it to be replayed several times so the people around him could watch too. A president sitting in the White House, rewatching a scene in which a character reacts with disbelief upon hearing his name as president, and thinking it was the funniest thing he had seen that year. But here is the detail no one expected. Reagan did not just watch it and laugh. He actually referenced Back to the Future in his 1986 State of the Union address, the most important speech an American president gives each year, when he cited the film's spirit of optimism while talking about America's future. The movie the studio feared would anger the president became the movie that very president quoted on a national stage. Sometimes the thing you worry about most becomes the best thing that can happen to your film. Number 7. The DeLorean and the Libyan terrorists. In the movie, Doc Brown has a not-so-glorious secret. He stole plutonium from a group of Libyan terrorists to power the DeLorean, promising to build them a nuclear bomb and then giving them an empty shell instead. It is one of the strangest plot points in the film. An eccentric scientist tricking international terrorists to get radioactive material for a time machine. On screen, it is handled so lightly that most audiences simply laughed and kept watching. Behind the camera, Universal Pictures was sweating bullets. In 1985, tensions between the United States and Libya were at their peak. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was a constant presence on the front pages of American newspapers because of terrorism sponsorship and political assassinations. Putting Libyan terrorists into a summer comedy was no small decision in that political climate. The studio seriously considered changing the terrorists' nationality, making them an unnamed group or from a fictional country to avoid diplomatic trouble. Robert Zemeckis refused. He kept Libya because its immediacy was exactly what he wanted. Audiences in 1985 heard the name Libya and instantly understood this was a real threat, not a fictional villain. That specificity gave the opening scene real weight before everything veered into comedy. Universal reluctantly agreed and waited for the reaction. The reaction came, and it was nothing like what the studio feared. Audiences laughed. The press did not make a scandal of it. There was no wave of political outrage, no meaningful diplomatic incident. It turned out that when you put Libyan terrorists into a comedy featuring a fire-trailing DeLorean, people did not see it as a political statement. They saw it as the funniest scene of that summer. Number 6. Twin Pines Mall or Lone Pine Mall. This is the detail that, if you caught it on your first viewing, you belong to a very small group of incredibly attentive movie watchers. The film begins clearly. Marty arrives at Twin Pines Mall at 1:15 a.m. to meet Doc Brown. The sign is large, clear, impossible to miss. Twin Pines Mall, 2 pine trees. Then Marty is thrown back to 1955. The DeLorean crashes through a farm, and while panicking and escaping from Old Man Peabody chasing him with a shotgun, the DeLorean's tire runs straight over a young pine tree growing on the family's land. A tiny detail, one little pine tree. No one notices because everything is happening too fast, and Marty is fleeing from a man who thinks he is an alien. Later, Marty fixes everything, reunites his parents, and returns to 1985 just in time. He lands in the familiar parking lot, and if you look at the sign behind him for 1 second, one brief moment, it is no longer Twin Pines Mall, it is Lone Pine Mall, 1 pine tree. Because Marty ran over 1 pine tree in 1955, the Peabody farm had only 1 left, and 30 years later, when the land was developed into a shopping center, the name reflected that changed history. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale never explained this detail. No character points at the sign and says, "Oh, look at that." It is simply there for silent and perfect, waiting for the audience to discover it. This is one of the most elegant pieces of foreshadowing, or more accurately, consequence showing, in film history. And when you discover it for the first time, Whether on your second viewing or your 10th, the feeling makes you want to rewind immediately and rewatch the pine tree getting crushed. Zemeckis and Gale knew exactly what they were doing, and they said nothing. They just left it there and waited. Number 5. Huey Lewis failed his own song. Opening scene of Back to the Future. Marty McFly and his band stand on the school auditorium stage, preparing to audition for the school dance. They begin to play. Loud volume, high energy, electric guitar shaking the room. Then a man standing below raises a microphone and says flatly, "I'm afraid you're just too darn loud." The band is rejected immediately. That man judging them is Huey Lewis, lead singer of Huey Lewis and the News and the writer of the very song Marty was playing. He appears in a brief cameo and personally rejects his own song from the competition. But here is the part many people do not know. Lewis did not know the song would be used in the movie until he was invited to shoot the cameo. Zemeckis and the production team had already chosen The Power of Love for the scene, then contacted Lewis afterward. When he arrived on set and fully understood the joke, that he would reject a band performing his own songs, he thought it was perfect and agreed immediately. Nothing more complicated than that. He showed up, said one line, and left. The scene took only minutes to shoot. Then Back to the Future hit theaters, and The Power of Love became a worldwide #1 hit, reaching the top of the Billboard Hot 100, playing on every radio station, and becoming one of the songs most associated with the 1980s. The song, whose own writer had just declared too loud on screen, sold millions because of that film. Huey Lewis failed his own song. Then that song became the biggest hit of his career. Not a bad ending for a failed audition. Number 4. Crispin Glover lost the role for asking too much. In the first film, Crispin Glover played George McFly, the timid, awkward father constantly bullied by Biff until Marty helps him rediscover himself. Glover played the role so well that many viewers remember George McFly almost as much as Marty or Doc. He gave the character a genuine, lovable clumsiness not every actor could deliver. Then came part 2, and everything fell apart. During contract negotiations, Glover made salary demands the studio was unwilling to meet, but money was only part of the problem. Glover also had serious creative disagreements with Zemeckis, specifically about the ending of the first film. He did not agree with the McFly family becoming wealthy after Marty fixed the past. According to Glover, that was morally wrong. Love and family connection should be the real reward of the story, not a nicer house and a new car. Love should be the reward, not money, he said directly to Zemeckis. Zemeckis disagreed and, according to many accounts, was angry with Glover over it. The two sides found no common ground. Glover did not return for part 2. The problem was that Universal still wanted George McFly in the sequel, so they hired another actor, molded Glover's face, and created a prosthetic mask so the replacement would resemble him on screen. Glover discovered this and responded by suing Universal for using his likeness without permission. The case was settled for $760,000. But the larger consequence went far beyond the number. Glover's lawsuit directly led to a new Screen Actors Guild rule prohibiting studios from using an actor's likeness without clear consent. One actor lost a role over money and creative philosophy and accidentally changed the rules of Hollywood itself. Number 3. The film was rejected by both Disney and Hollywood for opposite reasons. We already mentioned the 44 rejections at number 15. But behind that number is a paradox so strange that if Zemeckis and Gale told it to someone, they would think it was made up. Most studios rejected Back to the Future for one simple reason: it was too wholesome. The early 1980s were the golden age of raunchy teen comedies. Films full of sex jokes, crude humor, and absurdity pushed to the limit. Animal House, Porky's, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That was what sold tickets. A movie about friendship, time travel, and family, even with a cheeky edge, did not fit. Studios shook their heads and said it plainly, not raunchy enough to compete. Zemeckis and Gale heard that enough times and decided to try the Walt Disney Company, the biggest family film studio in the world, where wholesome was the gold standard. Disney rejected it, but not because it was too wholesome, because it was too inappropriate. Specifically, the story of Mother Lorraine developing romantic feelings for her own son, even without knowing who he was judged completely unsuitable for the company's family brand. Zemeckis and Gale stood trapped between two extremes, too wholesome for raunchy Hollywood, too edgy for family-friendly Disney. No one wanted the movie. No one except Universal Pictures, which finally said yes after the success of Romancing the Stone. And here is the funniest twist of all. The movie Disney rejected as unsuitable for families later became one of the most beloved family films of all time. Multiple generations of parents have watched Back to the Future with their children and saw no problem at all. Disney passed. Universal bet on it. And 4 decades later, Back to the Future is still the movie every family knows, just not under the Disney banner. Number 2, the insane shooting schedule that nearly broke Fox. We talked about Fox's schedule at number 12. But when you dig deeper into what he actually went through, the 5 hours of sleep a night was only the tip of the iceberg. There were days, and these were real days on the production calendar, when Fox filmed the Enchantment Under the Sea dance scenes on Back to the Future until 3 a.m., took off his costume, drove home, and had to be at the Family Ties set by 8 a.m. to film a completely different sitcom as a completely different character. 5 hours. Not 5 hours of solid sleep, 5 hours including driving, showering, and trying to remember which role he was playing the next day. The Back to the Future crew understood those limits and tried to schedule as intelligently as possible. Scenes that required the least energy, the least movement, were pushed to the end of the night when he was already exhausted. Scenes that needed Fox to run, jump, react quickly, those were prioritized earlier in the evening when he had just arrived. That was survival logic, not normal film production logic. And here is the perfect irony no one could have planned. Marty McFly spends the movie racing against time. Only minutes before the lightning strike, only seconds before he fades out of existence, always late, always rushing. And the actor playing Marty was literally racing against time every day, counting every hour of sleep, measuring every minute of driving between 2 sets, living in a constant state of urgency for months. Art imitates life. Or in this case, life imitated art in a way nobody planned. Fox later looked back on that period and said it was one of the proudest times of his career, and also the most exhausting. Those two things do not contradict each other. Sometimes the things you are proudest of are the things that nearly killed you before they were finished. Number 1. The original ending of the movie was completely different. Rewind to the version of Back to the Future that almost reached theaters. The version with no Doc Brown returning in the flying DeLorean, no line about roads, and no hint of a sequel. In the original script, Back to the Future ended simply and completely self-contained. Marty returns to 1985. Everything has been fixed, and the McFly family is fine. Then George McFly happens to notice an old photograph, the image of a strange teenage boy playing guitar on stage at the 1955 dance. He stares at the photo and quietly says it can't be, but it is. Screen goes black. End of film. No Doc, no flying DeLorean, no roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Just a man looking at a photograph and realizing a secret he will never fully understand. It was a good ending, subtle, poetic, and entirely complete on its own. Then test audiences saw the movie and reacted more strongly than anyone expected. The studio saw the numbers, saw the potential, and started thinking sequel. Zemeckis and Gale were asked to add something, an open door, a tease, a promise. They sat down and wrote Doc's return scene within 24 hours. The DeLorean flies out of nowhere. Doc jumps out in bizarre clothes and tells Marty they need to go back to the future because something involves the kids. Then Zemeckis realized he needed a final line. One sentence that captured the spirit of the whole movie in a few words. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads. That line was written, approved, and filmed in the same insane 24-hour stretch. Universal, seeing the overwhelming test audience response, moved the release date from August to July to capture the summer season. Back to the Future opened on July 3, 1985 and became the highest-grossing film of the year, earning $389 million worldwide. 2 sequels followed. Theme park rides were built. A franchise has lasted 4 decades and still shows no signs of stopping. It all began with an ending written in 24 hours by 2 men who had just been asked to open a door. They had no idea where it would lead. Sometimes the greatest things are created not from a perfect plan, but from a 24-hour deadline and one simple question. How do we end this? And those were 15 strange facts about Back to the Future. From a script rejected 44 times, to a lead actor fired after more than a month of filming, to a title that almost became Spaceman from Pluto, to a final line written in 24 hours that launched a franchise lasting 4 decades. Back to the Future was not a perfect movie from the start. It was a movie rescued, patched together, rewritten, and believed in by people who refused to quit after having doors slammed in their faces 44 times. Zemeckis and Gale had no reason to continue after the 20th rejection, the 30th, or the 40th, but they kept going, and the result was one of the most beloved movies of all time. If you liked this video, hit like and subscribe so you do not miss future deep dives into the films that shaped our generation. Let us know in the comments, what viewing number was it when you first noticed the Twin Pines Mall or Lone Pine Mall detail? And remember, roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.